So what did we finish the talk about social media? The point
No,
that we wanted to make? Yeah.
is it okay to go there? Because I really
Yeah.
want to give you guys one of my epiphanies on there that I found. When I started that chapter, it's at the beginning of the book on, because we go through like, here's your inventory, here's what you need to do to be worthy. And then we're going into, okay, can you find friends on social media? I had to rewrite the chapter because it was coming out, it was during COVID. And my opinion was that you cannot make true friends. You cannot do that on social media. So I went out and I interviewed. I used Clubhouse as my tool, and I interviewed hundreds and hundreds of people. And I was like, okay, tell me your story. How did that work? See, I learned from you, Zack. Tell me your story. How did that work? How did you connect? And then what I realized is that that's an old thought. You can make amazing friends connecting if you hear their voice. So go back to, remember I said 38% of our communications comes through voice and tone, 55% of it comes through body language. So you cannot do it on words alone, my friends. You have to go in there. You cannot be just because your Facebook posts, which I'm not a fan of Facebook, but Facebook and some of the other things, you have to actually then take it off the social media, direct message them, tell them why you're interested in it. And so the book walks through some steps on that. But for example, yesterday when I was on the show with the lady who was Australian, she and the woman that were interviewing me had become best friends. They met socially online through one of the apps. They talk weekly. Now they've started a business. They've started the show, right? They've never met each other in person yet. That's something they're looking forward to because Australia is still on lockdown. They're just coming out of it. So it's fascinating. So I had to change my whole thought on, is it possible that you could make a true friend? So back to Zack's original thought, like, well, how do I get out? I'm 35. How do I find people? So you can find people on, I don't mean like dating, but I mean, you can find them. And if there's an interest and there's something they're posting and they're like, hey, I'm into this, you can follow back up with them like, oh, you're doing a fundraiser for such and such. Okay, great. I'm in. So there's ways to like find the people, your tribe, and then see if it's going to fit. But I didn't tell you this part, and this is in the book too. At the very beginning, what I really tell everybody to do is you got to sit down and you have to write out your values. If you don't know what your values are and what you stand for and what you don't stand for, and I call them the non-negotiables. If you don't know those non-negotiables, let me tell you, my friends, you're going to continue to bring people in your life that should not be in your life. And then you're going to get frustrated and you're going to think this whole friendship thing is wasting my time. So know your values before you look for people on social media.
So how do you recommend, if someone's to violate those values, how do you recommend to people to, for lack of better terms, end that friendship or create that distance and space?
One is they have to communicate up front, though. They have to first, they got to cool off. Please, 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 please cool off. So if you get upset with somebody that they've done something, do not assume that the person was automatically being a total jerk on purpose, because sometimes things happen. And I can tell you, benefit of own experience, that luckily sometimes that I asked for a second opinion of somebody and I'm like, why would somebody do this? What? And I was getting ready to be so upset or annoyed, right? And then somebody threw that in there and they were like, well, Elizabeth, it might have been. And I went, oh, I hadn't thought about that. So either first get a second opinion. Thirdly, make sure you're cooling off. Okay. And then circle back to the person just to make sure and just say, hey, Alyssa, this really, like, when we were talking last week, you said that, and I don't know if you knew this, but, and then when Joe laughed at it, like, guys, you guys really kind of just, I almost felt like you were making fun of me or whatever the thing is that you're like feeling upset about, or like you were pulling me down or you're not believing me. But we have to communicate back somewhere in there to give them a clue, because this is what I've learned. When I've done that, the people go, what are you talking about? And so I will repaint the moment and they're like, oh my gosh, oh no, that's not what I meant. Usually, you can see if it's sincere. Okay. So one, it's like, I misread it. Or if I said like, for example, you seemed really disinterested in this whole thing that I've opened my heart. And this is a true story that someone told me. She said she like finally got around to the point. She opened her heart. She told somebody something that was really heavy on her heart. She was dealing with. It was hard to be that vulnerable. And then her friend just looked at her and was like, I think it's going to rain tomorrow. And the person just like totally just, and what it did is the person who was telling that and conveyed it to me later said, I just felt like I thought we were closer and I never want to talk to that person again, but it made her angry. So I recommended, I said, please circle back. Just candidly say to her, look, like I thought I could share that with you. And I know it's funny, right? But when it's happening to you, it's like, seriously?
Is it because some people just like their emotions, their I don't know what the word is, but like whatever it is with it, like you don't have the same feeling. So like you don't, it's kind of like when,
real quick, as you're thinking about that, Zach, the other thing that I think that complicates everything is that people are a whole lot more confident behind a keyboard than they are face to face.
An actual keyboard, not a Zoom call.
Would never say, most people would never say the things that they're going to type in their keyboard face to face to somebody. I mean, the level of confidence and the sharpness of the elbows increases on a keyboard.
Hello, trolls.
Face to face, right?
Well, and you know what? That in that instance, so when the lady who I said, please just go back before you're like write her off. Right.
What's like it wouldn't matter to that person.
I said, before you do that, and don't assume that she wasn't feeling your heart. I said, just please have a conversation with her. And the woman said, well, one, I was trying to focus on what you were saying. It was so much information, I couldn't absorb it. And then secondly, I had to put my dog to sleep yesterday. I wasn't quite myself.
Well, you never know what that person's going through too.
And I'm really sorry because I probably wasn't listening as much, but I was trying to follow with the conversation and it was so deep and you were so much and you were so upset. I just kind of just blanked out and I didn't know what to do because I felt like I didn't even know how to respond. So see, that's the openness that then what did let the hurt person do? The hurt person was able to come forward and go, oh, well, I thought it was just that you never wanted me to tell you anything like that anymore. And that's why a lot of guys I've seen, I've stood there while one guy like opened up and said something to another guy. Cause I know, and in my book, I talk about man talk. I love you all. And I love how you man talk. Okay. But I have actually watched a guy like open up and say something like, and the other guy goes, yeah, man, well, that's too bad. You want to go get another beer? Like, I mean, and I'm standing there going, oh my God, like, could you have at least been like, well, are you doing okay now? Like,
but the beer makes it better.
But but it was like in this guy, and I'm like, okay, he just told you like something like really, what he told you sounded like a country Western song, my wife left me, my dog's dead, my cow's dead. I mean,
I think sometimes people just don't, it just doesn't hit people the same way. Like it's like roll off. It's just like whatever, and it's just like and like I feel like I'm that person, and I feel really bad even saying that. But it's just like, okay, like that's unfortunate. Like, yes, that happened, and it sucks. We got to move on.
I think that location has something to do with that too, in terms of different cultures. Like down here in Hampton Roads, everything is a lot more touchy feely. Maybe it's because it's a little more southern, but like you go up someplace like Northern Virginia, DC area, they'll stab you in the front and be like, hey, you ready to go grab lunch? Or,
you're like, walk it off.
Yeah. And I'm like, man, I could never do business with someone like that. But, it's,
but that's where we need to know who we can talk to and who we can't. And that's the lesson learned. So for example, I went back to the lady who told me the story and I said, well, one, you've learned she's not the person you're going to open your heart to, especially if she comes back. And then two, maybe you need to like shorten it up a little bit because it's too much too early. You're not anchored with that person enough.
Do you think that, okay, so this is the most random of tangents, okay? But I think this might actually be the reason why. So we have so much content, so much media, so much things that we are consuming on a daily basis that we see all of these stories, right? In the last few weeks, I guess there was a couple, like a YouTube couple that maybe one of them might have murdered the other one. It was something in Utah, something like that. And have you guys seen this story? It was like opening news on like my sister was telling me about it. It was like they're like 20-year-olds and like in Montana in a van and yada yada yada. It's like I can't remember their names.
Good.
But she's telling me this story, and I'm like, who cares? Like
That's what I just did, right? Good. I don't want
right,
to know
right.
more.
So you don't know them, right? And it has that trickle effect of these things that like we don't know? Is that trickling into our world, our actual real world, so
And
that
the
we
thing
have?
is, with these algorithms, man, you know, all these platforms know how much time you spend looking at these articles, looking at these pictures, watching these videos, and then you start doom scrolling, and then everything is in your feed is just the worst stuff on the planet, and it's just totally dementing people. I mean, it's
That's
like
interesting. I've never heard the term doom scrolling. That's really interesting. But that's like, wow, I wrote that one down. I'm like,
isn't it interesting? Like I see that, and obviously someone being murdered in this case is a terrible thing, but I sit there and I'm just like, yo, like I live 2,000 miles away. This is unfortunate. I don't care. Why is this news? And maybe that's also because I worked in the news, so like I saw all that stuff, maybe not to the scale of like a New York City, but like I'm just like, okay. I don't know. Like it's very odd to me. I would much rather see positive things than a lot of these negative things. I feel like the fact that people care about these things to me is just ridiculous in most cases.
I love what you just said about positive things, because that is one of the main reasons why people don't keep friends. So if every time somebody sees somebody, and then all they do is, and I loved when Tim said doom scrolling, because if all they're doing is like doom scrolling out of their mouth, I mean, you know those people, and you're just like, oh gosh, you know.
Oh, because they're too negative, they don't stay friends.
They just want to like tell you everything that's bad in the world and nothing. And you're like, and I've actually said to some of those people before, and they usually don't get to stay in my circle long. I'm like, you know, you got to tell me something good that's going on in your life. There's got to be something that you're happy of, proud of. Good.
We all have plenty of good things happening on a daily basis.
What's a blessing that's happened to you, or you know? And then all of a sudden, and if I get them to think about it, but then it's funny because it's like they want to go back to it. So when we talked about that values list and the things that are important, joy and happiness and gratitude, and I mean these are all things that are on my value list. These are the people I roll with. You know, and yeah, we all get sad. We all have terrible things that happen in our life, but happiness is a choice. Right. And even the worst things that we can deal with in our life, we have that choice. And it's like, are we going to be that person that's just going to stay there and dwell? Because guess what? Those are, or unless you're going to keep those kind of friends, but I don't recommend it because they're not going to make you grow.